Welcome to the Small Town Big Dreams podcast. My name is Becky Waples, and this is the podcast that celebrates small town creators and shares their stories. A creator to me could be an entrepreneur, someone with a side hustle, a person with a passion project, even a social media guru, or anybody else who has taken their goal and is crushing it. From their background to where they found the courage, from their challenges to their wins, to where they find inspiration and how they took their first step, I cannot wait to chat and laugh about anything and everything that comes with creating something from scratch. If you are inspired by small town creators who turn their big dreams into reality, then this is the podcast for you. Please subscribe to hear all upcoming podcasts, follow me on Instagram, and leave a review or comment so I know what you want to hear and what creators inspire you. Let's grow together. So Krista, thank you for joining me today. I am excited to hear your story. I kind of went through your website a little bit, but I'm excited to hear it come directly from you. So let's start with, can you tell me a bit about your background and your business?
First of all, thank you for having me on here. This is exciting. I love chatting with people about business and stuff like that. So I guess my background is varied. I've literally done everything, and it all led me to opening up this business called Here on Lake Huron. So we are an apparel company. So we sell cozy and casual clothing. We use Lake Huron as our muse. We also have a line of greeting cards, a line of art prints as well. And everything we do is about the beautiful Lake Huron.
When you reached out to me, did you know I lived in Port Elgin?
I did, yes. I think it says Sogging Shores on your...
Yeah. But then when you reached out to me, I was like, that's very cool, because you wouldn't have known that I grew up in Lion's Head. Where we live is like the smallest part, the skinniest part of the Bruce Peninsula. And I grew up on the Lake Huron side.
Love it.
Yeah. So when me and my husband lived in the city and we moved back to up this area, we were like, should we move to Owen Sound or should we move to Port Elgin or like in between? And I don't want to offend anybody in Owen Sound, but I said, no, we're moving back to the Lake Huron side. Like Owen Sound stored in May. I said, no, we're moving back to the Lake Huron side, which is why I'm in Port Elgin now, is because of the lake. I don't live on the water, but it's a quick 3-minute drive away.
So good.
Yeah, where I grew up in Lion's Head, we didn't live on the water either, but it was like a 2-minute walk, like to the boat ramp. I just have so many memories of the water because even like coming home from school, you would, as soon as you went over the hill and you saw the water, you're like, nice, almost home.
Oh.
So Lake Huron, I read your bio, and Lake Huron has a special place in your heart and has a special place in my heart too.
It does. I always say I accidentally fell in love with Lake Huron because like my family had a family cottage up in Muskoka. So I've always been a cottager for all my life, but we've always headed up to Muskoka. And my dad got sick. Gosh, it was probably around 2015 now. Like with COVID, you know, you're like, how many years have gone by?
Yeah.
But he had stage 4 melanoma and was on a really, really strong chemo. So he would be sleeping for most of the day. And my mom was his primary caregiver, and she was just literally depleted. Like it was wearing on her so badly. And so every weekend I'd say, Mom, let's jump in the car. We're going to forget everything and we're going to go on a road trip. And we just kept on going up to the lake because where I live, like Grand Bend is close, Bayfield's close, even Kincardine. So that's kind of the Goderich, obviously, that's kind of the area we kept on going to. And the lake healed us. It gives me goosebumps. And sometimes I get emotional when I tell this story because I could see the weight just physically lifting off of my mom's shoulders, even if it was just for a few hours. And we would sit by the lake and just listen to the seagulls, listen to the waves. I would take a million pictures. And I was like, this lake has this healing power. And I was like, why isn't anyone talking about Lake Huron? Because again, we were quote unquote Muskoka people. And I literally felt, I've said, you know, I was looking for solace, and then I had this great love affair with this lake, and it was literally accidental. And it was because my dad was so sick that I kept on heading up there.
That's funny. Well, it's not funny. It's a comforting story. But I used to ask people growing up, they'd say they had a cottage, and I'd be like, "Where's your cottage?" Thinking they would say something like Tobermory, Lion's Head, Sauble Beach. They'd always say the Muskokas too. So it's funny that you say that no one was talking about Lake Huron, because I always thought, really, no one ever says Southampton. No one ever says, yeah, Kincardine. And if they did, wow, let's talk. Like, I want to hear every single story.
Yes, exactly.
And what made you think, I'm going to take my love for Lake Huron and turn it into a company?
So I was literally on a quest for a hoodie that said Lake Huron on it. So I saw a lot of Great Lakes, awesome company, but I was like, yeah, awesome, but I want Lake Huron. You know, I didn't care about the other 4 Great Lakes.
Yes.
Or I would see a hoodie that said Kincardine or Godrich or whatever on it. But to me, it didn't matter where I was except for the lake. So I couldn't find one because and again, this was pre-COVID. So, you know, I would go home after work and I would just want to get into my cozies, but I'd want to feel that Lake Huron vibe. And I thought, well, if I grab a souvenir sweatshirt, you know, I'll feel it again. And anyway, so I couldn't find one. And I kept on saying to my mom when we would be at the lake, I think I have a business here. Why isn't anyone making a Lake Huron sweatshirt? And so that's kind of like, I would say I had the idea for well over a year before I pursued it, because I knew I needed to have a catchy name. I just didn't want Lake Huron. So that's where Here On Lake Huron came from. And once I had the name, I was like, I trademarked it. I was like, I got this. So it started as my side hustle and then just grew from there.
Is it still your side hustle? Or do you?
No, it's my full-time gig now.
That's very cool. Have you always wanted to create something, be an entrepreneur? When we talked before the podcast, you mentioned that you had your own podcast about entrepreneurs. So do you have another entrepreneurial story?
Not necessarily. I just always wanted to be my own boss. Like, I think entrepreneurs, like for me anyways, I have a million ideas in this head of mine. I'm sure it's ADHD, but it just entrepreneurship, and that's, you know, self-diagnosed ADHD, but I think entrepreneurship just works well for my personality. I actually get bored very easily. So if you go through my work history, I've literally had a million different jobs and I love to succeed. And then I'm like, okay, done. Now what? So what I love about entrepreneurship is there's so many different facets. Like, yes, I own a business and we sell cozy, casual Lake Huron inspired merchandise, but there's so many things behind the scenes that light me up that I'm able to do. So I just always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Back in the day, I used to have my quote unquote dream job. I loved it. I was a retail buyer. I was responsible for 2 stores. So I got to create products to sell in the 2 stores. And I got to go to, you know, Toronto to go shopping to buy the products for the store. And it truly was my dream job, but I wanted more. And so I left that job and I went to a job where it was truly a 9-to-5, Monday to Friday, because that previous job as a retail buyer, I was working 60 hours a week and I didn't have the capacity to start a side hustle. So I was on this trajectory knowing that I was going to start a business. I was in a different job. And then from there, that's really when I was able to put, you know, my hours after 5 o'clock and on the weekend into starting Here on Lake Huron.
Coming from a diagnosed ADHD person, your story sounds very similar to mine. When you said that you would feel successful, and I'm like, okay, what's next? That's definitely me as well. I've always known that I want to help small businesses. I want to be a small business that helps small businesses. And I agree with you because you kind of make your own goals. Like you're not working for someone else. So you can always find a new definition of success, is
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I love what you're doing because like one of my key mottos for my business and for my life is collaboration over competition. You know, I think there's room for all of us, and I think we can all be successful. And because I'm successful doesn't mean that you can't be successful. And I really believe that even with my competitors, I always say there's room for all of us. Like my business is different than somebody else's business. It just is. But that doesn't mean that we can't share customers or even have completely separate customers. And it also doesn't mean that I don't want, like I said, you to be successful as well. So having a podcast like this, I think just networking as small business owners, as entrepreneurs is so important.
I agree with you too. I think that when you said collaboration over competition, in the day of social media, you're only spreading the word bigger. Like honestly,
Yes.
like the more, if there was like a Georgian Bay company, that's not your competition because they're going to start talking about Georgian Bay sweaters and that someone's going to say, I also love Lake Huron. I want both, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think with social media and going viral and spreading the awareness like that, it can only be collaboration now. You can't look at things as competition.
No, but that's also the beauty of Instagram. Like I reached out to you and I was like, I don't know if you want me on your podcast or not, but I was like, I'm going to introduce myself anyways. And a lot of my business owner friends, we met over Instagram. Like when I had a podcast, I was like, like you can tell people's, mind you, my face is never on stories, but for the businesses that do that, you can really feel somebody's energy on stories. And I would just reach out to those people and I was like, hey, I'm starting a podcast. Love your energy. Do you want to be on it? And so many people said yes. And it was so not even validating. It was just that I was so excited to connect with people.
Someone said something too. They were like, you don't want to interview the same person every time, or like the same type of company. And I was like, I mean, everyone has a different story and a different journey. I could do 4 realtors in a row, and they would all have a different way of getting there. And
True.
And the goal of the podcast is really to inspire at any aged person to, if they have a passion, to go for it. And so you have to hear all different kinds of stories, even in the same type of industry, is my thinking.
Yep, I agree.
Have you faced any challenges or hiccups since you started?
1,000,001. I mean, that's how it goes though, right?
Yeah.
And I think you learn from those challenges. I think 2023 alone has been a really challenging year for lots of small businesses. I know I was scrolling Instagram right before you and I connected this morning, and I saw that a business in Woodstock is closing its door. I think they were celebrating 3 years today, and they said, you know, I'm sorry to say that the business is going to close. And I find that really disheartening. It's scary. And I think for me, again, on this trajectory that I'm on, it's about different revenue streams. So I can keep this as my full-time business, you know, moving forward. So to answer your question, yes, I can't imagine any small business owner not facing hurdles, but it's what you learn from that and how you pivot from that P word, but how you pivot from there.
If it's a big one, I hear talking to business owners. That's the other thing. Like, I think I knew I obviously knew there were entrepreneurs out there. Since starting the podcast, it feels like everybody has a passion for something, and everybody knows an entrepreneur. I didn't realize that at the time. But yeah, pivot is a word I hear so many times. Pivot, pivot, pivot.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Here on Lake Huron. You mentioned it a little bit, but what products do you offer specifically?
Yeah, for sure. So I'd say our top sellers probably would be our t-shirts. So I think right now we offer, you know, short sleeve t-shirts in, 10 to 12 colors. My peak business is really in July and August. So that makes perfect sense that, you know, t-shirts sell really well. We also have really cozy sweatshirts. So I have those really loyal customers that I absolutely love that are like, I have this and this color, And it just warms my heart. Or my daughter stole my sweatshirt, so now I need another one.
Yeah.
So we do hoodies, crew necks, T-shirts, and then another really popular item is our distressed Here on Lake Huron caps. And so they're really popular as well.
How do we find you? You're online. And
Yes.
you must spend a lot of time at the markets up here.
I do. I feel like I have the best job because I get to be by the lake all the time. So I mostly sell, well, I shouldn't say. At this moment, I don't mostly sell online. When I started in 2020, we were in lockdown. So 100% of my revenue, my sales would be online. But I do a lot of markets. I think I do like 75 to 100 every year. So I do markets from Sarnia all the way up to Sauble Beach.
And then are you in any stores?
I am. That's changed over the years, but I am in a store in Sarnia, one in Bayfield, and one in Concardin at the moment.
Okay. And then I put on here, can you tell us about Fair? Are you with Fair?
I am. So we do have a line of greeting cards, and we're actually really known for our greeting cards. My mom, my 75-year-old mom, draws them for me. And they're seagulls that wear outrageous costumes. And so we sell our greeting cards on Fair. And Fair is kind of like Etsy, but for retailers. So we have our greeting cards in stores. Well, I just had an order placed from South Carolina last week.
Wow.
We're in Washington State. Where else are we? We're all over. We're mostly in the States, to tell you the truth. We have a couple stores in London, a store in Newfoundland. So, seagulls are everywhere, right? So, and you either get them or you don't. So I always say they're so ugly, they're cute. And there is definitely a real customer that will, like, I'm always known at the market as the Lake Huron lady, which I love, or the seagull lady. So I have customers coming up, where's my seagull lady? Oh, there you are. So yeah, so that's what we do on Fair. We wholesale our greeting cards on Fair.
I'm just looking at them on your website now, and they're so cute. Like, I love them. Your mom makes these.
Yeah. So the male is named Harry, and then the female is Harriet.
I love it. That is so cool. My brain is always working on what should my small business be? What should I do? What should I do? And
Yes.
I've always wanted to include my dad. That's so funny. I'm always like, well, if I start a food truck, then he'll make my homemade soups and he'll make the sandwiches. So do you like working with your mom?
I do. And so we started this again when my dad was sick. So, and he has since passed away. So it gave my mom that purpose. And like, my mom went to art college. She's an incredible, like, she loves doing line drawing. And then she just stopped, right? She raised her family and all that kind of stuff. And then she stopped drawing. So I don't even remember where the idea came from, like why we decided that she was going to start drawing seagulls. I really don't recall how that came up. But what we usually do is we have a glass of Sauvignon Blanc in our hand and we brainstorm like ideas for Harry and Harriet. And obviously the more we drink, the more silly it becomes. And then sometimes the next day or whatever, we'll look at the list and go, oh my God, we cannot do that. But for the most part, it works. And one of our top sellers, unfortunately, we're sold out right now, but it's Harriet, and it says another cocktail ? And then it says Yeth, like YETH, Yeth. So that's definitely one of our top sellers.
I love the wedding one, the old, new, borrowed, and blue one.
Yes, that's fun too.
That's so cute. But yeah, that's really cool that you were able to do that, find that connection and business know-how with your mom. That's really cool. Did she have a job or when she was raising her family?
No. Well, she had a part-time job. She worked like I grew up in the GTA. So when we were there, she worked for an orthodontist. But then when we moved up to Southwestern Ontario, she was here raising her kids. So
That's very cool. Was there anything specific to how you set up and launched? Like, I don't know a ton about apparel companies. You must have had to make connections or.
well, in my previous job as a retail buyer, I did a lot of product development and we sold a lot of t-shirts. So it was really a natural progression. So I actually eliminated the middleman as well because back in the day, I used a middleman and he would find the samples for me. I would go through the samples and then he would have the items printed for me. But I knew I could do all that myself. So I have tons, like dozens of samples. Like I often get asked, will you make a tank top? And I will someday, but I've yet to find the perfect tank top that is soft. Like all my t-shirts, my sweatshirts, they're all incredibly soft. That's really important to me. So I source all the shirts, the apparel, the line, and then I send it to my printer and I have it professionally screen printed or embroidered. So I kind of knew what I was doing. I just, like I said, I eliminated the middleman.
Do you have employees? Like, what's your team look like or your support?
It's me. And then when I need lots of folding done, I get my mom to do that too. So,
so all the markets, the 75 to 100 markets is you.
Well, I used to bring my niece when I first started markets, especially when I was working full time too. I just found it too much. But once I left my corporate job to do this full time, I actually didn't need my niece anymore because I had full-time hours to spend on it. So no, it's just me and, any of my family members when I really need them.
Very cool. And what about the community? Do you give back to Lake Huron region?
I think I do in lots of different ways. The nice thing about my business is, like I said, I really concentrate on Sarnia to Sauble. So I'm only part of one now, but I used to be part of 2 Chamber of Commerce because it's such a large geographical area. I've given to dozens of charities, silent auction raffles and stuff like that. But I'd also take that one step further and going back to collaboration over competition. I just wrote a blog post about the perfect Lake Huron gift. And I reached out to, I think, about a dozen different small businesses that all had a Lake Huron inspired item in their collection. Yeah. So whether it was art, whether it was tea towels and stuff like that. And I sent them all an email and said, listen, I want to write this blog post. I think it's going to be valuable to my audience because it's not just about t-shirts. It's about so much more. And I said to them, this is just a goodwill offering. Like, let's help each other out sort of thing. And I think that's part of the community. That's part of the small business community as well.
I'm just looking at this now. I'll post it. I'll put it in the show notes, but it is very cool. That is very cool. You did that. So how have you found the Lake Huron region? Like all the little small towns? How have you found us as a
whole?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's funny because I find every town has a certain personality. Okay. And even the tourists that come, they're different. And so, for instance, in Kincardine, I do a lot of markets in Kincardine, and I'd have like a run on purple t-shirts. And I'd be like, what is going on? And then have a market the next day, and I don't know, I'm making this up right now, but Sarnia, and I wouldn't sell one purple t-shirt. I find that so fascinating. And my display's the same, so it's not like I've merchandised a little different. But my favorite part is really when I connect with customers or just with people that come to my booth and talk about the lake. So to me, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you are. I've had so many people tell me their story. I have to say I've cried at so many markets because their stories are so moving. Or how, like, countless of people have said to me, Lake Huron's really special to me because I lost blank, like a loved one or whatever. And they'll say, I read your story and it resonated with me so much. I get it. I get how your mom felt. I get how, I'm so sorry you lost your dad and all that kind of stuff. And that to me, you couldn't take that away. Like, it's worth $1 million right there, is just the stories and the connections that I have with the people that come up and chat with me at markets or send me emails, like the most lovely emails. And I'm just like, God, I love these people. Like, we're all the same. And it doesn't matter if you're in Southampton or Brights Grove near Sarnia. Like, that lake is pretty freaking special.
I have to find a market for you so you can head up to Lion's Head or, Stokes Bay, I said. But
yeah. And you know what? I think it's because it's so far away. Like, I was in Southampton every Friday this past summer, and that alone, like, round trip is a 4-hour trip for me. So yeah, it makes I think it's like a 12 or 13-hour day from the time I leave to the time I get home. So that's why I really haven't gone past Sauble, because it's just so far.
yeah.
So someday I will, though, and I can't wait.
I feel like we've covered a lot, but I was going to ask, have you faced any specific challenges by selling to small towns, or are there advantages?
That's a really good question. I guess the challenge is, it's strange because the people in my community in St. Mary's aren't necessarily my customers. So that's kind of strange, right? So, like you mentioned, talking to realtors or, say, other small business owners, there's probably a very good chance that where they live is where their customers, that's their customer base, and mine isn't. So that's been challenging in the sense that just going to markets, like the closest market to me is 45 minutes away. And that doesn't usually happen. But I wouldn't say there's a challenge. I think it's just, I love people from small towns, I think it's awesome.
Me too. I normally do questions from listeners later, but I did ask for questions from listeners on my Instagram, and that was what the question was. How do you find not living in the area, but having your customers in that area, like out of your area? So it's funny that she asked, my friend Lauren asked that too. I find a lot of small businesses like to, or small towns like to support small businesses in the area of people that they know. And so I'm guessing after 75 to 100 markets, they know you now.
I hope so, but there's still so many people that will be like, oh my God, I was looking for a Lake Huron shirt. Where have you been? And I'm like, I've been here. But, it's just, and that's because it's such a large geographical area, you literally can't be everywhere, right? So my goal really for 2024 is to develop a bigger online customer base, because a lot of people don't know that I exist. A lot of people don't even know the markets that I go to exist. So how would they know that I exist, right? So a lot of it is, because my t-shirts and my sweatshirts and stuff, it's one logo. So brand recognition is very important to me. So I know some other apparel companies have like quite a few different logos that they use, but that's not what my company is about. Brand recognition is really important. So a lot of times I'll have people come up and go, oh my God, there you are. My friend has a t-shirt and I love it. And I wasn't sure where to get it, right? Or I had the funniest thing happen to me. I was in Southampton last weekend, and I had this husband and wife come up to me and they said, oh my God, I literally just took a screenshot of your t-shirt. And I was like, well, where did you see it? And I said, oh, it was on my friend's Facebook page. And they showed me, like they literally showed me on their cell phone. And it was a t-shirt just folded up. And I don't even know why it was on the their Facebook page. but they took a screenshot and they were like, oh my God, we found you. So I love those stories too.
I'm trying to decide which one I'm going to buy my husband for Christmas. He likes golf.
Well, and
One.
okay. And I do have, I don't know if I should say this now, but I do have a discount code for all your listeners. So if they use the discount SMALL, so SMALL, then they get 15% off of any product other than gift cards on the website.
We'll remind them at the end, but that's exciting. Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
and I knew you were in Southampton last weekend. I meant to come and introduce myself, but I had sick kiddos all week, so yeah. But I knew you were there. I meant to come say hi, but didn't want to make anybody at the market sick.
Yes.
Now, there might be people out there who are also passionate about something and want to start a business. And I'm just wondering if you have any strategies or approaches or like an approach that you took that's been crucial to your success.
I think I started my Instagram community before I even had a product. So I just had a name. So Here on Lake Huron. And I don't have a ton of followers. I'm not, I'm no influencer on Instagram by any means. But what I started doing was taking pictures of the lake or just posting about a potential launch. And I think literally I had an Instagram account maybe a year before I even launched. And I think that was crucial because I started creating a community and I started creating some hype. I also had, before I launched my website, I think I had my website for 6 months, if not longer, before I did an official launch. And you could sign up for my email. I'll let you know when we launch, all that kind of stuff. So I had a decent size, it wasn't huge by any means, but a decent size email list even before I launched. And then when I launched in August of 2020, I was blown away. I was blown away by our first weekend. I literally, every time I would hear my phone cha-ching, I would cry. And I was like, oh my God, there's so many people that want my products. And I feel like that gave me really good momentum because it wasn't like, oh, here I am, I'm launching a business in 5 days. And everybody's like, who the heck are you? I had that real buildup, and I'd have people retail going, okay, but when are you launching, sort of thing. And I also got my first wholesale contract. I got 2 wholesale contracts. 2? I guess I got 1 before I launched and then 1 a week after I launched because, again, I had created this community. So to me, that was really important. And then secondly, I think the other thing that is, it's free, is to listen to podcasts. There you can, if you search the podcast app and just type in keywords, it's like going back to school, and you can listen while you're doing the dishes or tidying up or taking your kids to school or whatever, but it's free, amazing advice. And then you find that podcaster that you really love. And I felt like I had this plethora of knowledge before I even launched again. So I think those are my 2 key pieces of advice.
You almost have 3,000 followers. That's really good, I think.
Well, yeah, thank you. But it's no 10,000, right?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to get to 10,000.
I think so too.
But I like what you said. So I always say start before you're ready. And I like that you got it. And create some buzz, create some hype. I like that. So that when you did launch, people were like, finally, yes. And then they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't, your customers probably also didn't say I'll do that next week. They're like, finally, it's here. I've been waiting. Let's jump on this.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I guess the other piece of advice too is where you start isn't necessarily where you'll end up. So it's that pivot word again, right? That P word, that don't be afraid to be like I wasn't going to have a website, but then, and actually a business coach told me not to have a website, which is so funny now that I think of it. But he was like, nope, test it in markets. Like, don't have a website. Don't put your money into a website. Well, then COVID happened and I had to have a website. But it's, don't be afraid to test things and be like, okay, that didn't work. So now what? And that's okay, because where I was in August 2020 is not going to be where I'm going to be, the same place where I'm going to be August 2025. And I know that, and I'm excited about that.
I love that. I always like to ask, do you have a small business hack? And I think that's the answer. Create some buzz, keep trying, start before you're ready.
Yes. But I do think there's so many resources out there. And I think that honestly is a hack, is just find them, or just chat with somebody, like I said earlier, on Instagram. Hey, can I take you out for coffee? Do you want to chat? I'd love to, chat. And so many, like, being an entrepreneur is really lonely. So if somebody said that to me, I'd be like, sure, let's do it, because I want to know about you. And, there's probably stuff that you want to learn about me. And I just love having conversations like that.
That's another thing I found out, or I've started to learn about entrepreneurs, is that you're so helpful. So my thoughts are going crazy, but your small business hack could also be to listen to podcasts, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then now I've been listening to podcasts on people that are interviewing entrepreneurs, which is what I'm doing. And I'm just like, they ask such good questions. They ask better questions than me. I want to know that about mine. And then I reached out to the one podcast to tell her that I'm obsessed with it. Like, I'm loving every second of it. And she's like, well, let me help you with yours. What do you need? Let's talk.
Aww.
And I was like, this. And like you said, maybe where I started isn't where you're going to end up, because now I just feel like that's opened the doors even further. And I would have been scared. I think I would have been scared to ask, or like I said, maybe she'll think I'm competition because I'm not even on the same scale as her. But my brain would kind of be like, no, you probably shouldn't ask. Maybe you don't want to bother her. And I've learned that that's not what entrepreneurs do. They want to help you.
I think so. I think, like, I'm really into mindset work. I think it's really important as an entrepreneur, because we can get caught up in the quote unquote weeds, and that's never good for us. It's never good for a business. But what I find is, if you can find an entrepreneur that is all about abundance, and again, going back to that, I can be successful, but so can you be successful, that mindset, they'll never say no. They may say no because they're too busy, but it's never, oh no, I'm keeping the cards close to me, I'm not going to share with you. It's that scarcity mindset that says, oh no, I'm not telling you that. No, I'm not going to tell you that, And so when you can find fellow entrepreneurs that have that abundant mindset, that there's room for all of us, that's when magic happens.
Mm-hmm. Now I usually go to the questions from listeners, and I've already mentioned the first one, but I did get a second one. So from my sister, she's great. Thank you, Sarah, for coming up with one. But what have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about yourself since you started?
I have said that my superhero quality is that I'm courageous. And that's really what I've learned about myself. I'm an introvert. Like, I'm totally an introvert. But I love, like, how as an introvert do I love being on podcasts? And I was on a TV show in Sarnia a couple of months ago, and I'm like, how do I keep on saying yes to this? But I feel like my superpower is that I feel I will say yes to something that scares me, but it excites me, let's say that, at the same time. And I think that's what I've learned about myself, that I'm courageous and I'm open to saying yes, because you never know where that opportunity is going to take you.
It's also, I find, easier to say yes when you're so passionate about it and when it's something you created. Yeah.
Yes.
I would say that I'm an extrovert. So someone says, can you talk about something? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. but I'm kind of like, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? What am I going to talk? And then when someone asks me something about the podcast, I'm like, let's go. Like, I'm so excited.
Yes.
And I'll thank them. Thank you for asking me about it because I'm so excited to talk about it.
Exactly.
And then I usually kind of finish this up with a rapid fire round and like just to get to know you a little bit better.
Awesome.
So, well, I'm just going to ask you a couple questions just to get to know you, okay?
Okay.
So, Krista, what's your favorite way to stay active?
This is going to sound really trite, but I love going for walks along the Lake Huron shoreline. That would be my favorite. But even anywhere, I love going for a walk and listening to a business podcast. That's my jam.
See, what's your favorite book?
So something funny about me is I only read nonfiction, and I can't get into fiction. And I almost only read business related marketing books. Like, I'm obsessed with talking about business. So yeah. I guess one of my recent books is Stories That Stick by Kendra Hall is an awesome book for any business, like content creator, business owner. Great book.
Are you a night owl or an early bird?
Well, I think if you asked me during market season, I'd have to say an early bird because a lot of the times I'm out of my house, like out the door at 5 a.m. So I'm going to say that. Early bird.
Does pineapple belong on pizza?
No way.
I have the exact opposite reaction, but I love asking people that. It's such a passionate discussion people have in here.
But I also think that fruit isn't a dessert. So I have this love-hate relationship with fruit. So
and I've never heard that before. Everyone always thinks I always would pick fruit over vegetables.
Nope, not me. And I would always pick like a brownie over any fruit for a dessert. So
I would pick like a raspberry cheesecake or something.
I would just want the cheesecake.
Yeah. On the topic of food, what would be your last meal? In a really morbid way, if you're on death row and they said, fine, you have your last meal. Anything.
I would start with a pizza and end with a sandwich. I love a great sandwich.
I love a great sandwich too. Well, those are all my questions. Is there anything that I didn't cover that you wanted to discuss?
I don't think so. The only thing, like, I made a couple of notes, and what I forgot to say when you asked me about my business is that, like, the tagline for Here on Lake Huron is for those happiest at the lake. And so there's probably no way to get that in, but I was like, why didn't I say that? So that's the only note I have. I just honestly, because our community, it really doesn't matter if you're a cottager or a camper or you live at the lake or you only visit it once a year. I feel like we've created this community where everybody just loves the lake, and it doesn't matter where you are or how often you see it. And that's what Here on Lake Huron represents.
So thank you for connecting with me today. So you said promo code on your website. What's the website name?
So it's www.hereonlakehuron.com. So HEREON lakehuron.com. And then I have an exclusive offer. So if your listeners want 15% off, they just have to use the code SMALL.
And then where else can we find you?
Well, now that 2023 is coming to a close, I only have one market left. And then you can find me in Kincardine on Mondays next year in 2024. I'm in Goderich every Saturday, and then we'll be in Southampton on Friday. So there's that. And then on Instagram at Here on Lake Huron.
Perfect. Thanks for joining me today, Krista.